Marcus watched Clara pack her overnight bag for what felt like the 100th Friday in a row. The practiced routine had an air of normalcy that belied the knot tightening in his stomach. "Just drinks and catching up," she said, not meeting his eyes. "Adrian's going through a rough patch." He nodded, the script familiar, his wife and her ex-husband, just friends now. The weekend stretched before him like an empty highway. "Have fun," he offered, the words hollow even to his ears. Clara's phone buzzed. She checked it, a smile flickering across her face, before quickly disappearing. "I'll be back Sunday afternoon." As the door closed behind her, Marcus exhaled slowly. How long would he continue this charade? The red flags were mounting, waving frantically in his peripheral vision while he stubbornly stared straight ahead. Something would have to give. Marcus folded another freshly laundered shirt, adding it to the stack on their bed. Through the open bathroom door, he could hear Clara humming as she selected toiletries for her weekend away. The familiar Friday afternoon ritual had taken on an almost choreographed quality, her packing, while he pretended to be busy with household tasks. "Do you think I should bring the blue dress or the black one?" Clara called out, holding both up when he glanced toward the bathroom. "The black one," he answered automatically. He had no idea why she was asking. She never wore what he suggested anyway. Clara nodded absently, already folding the blue dress into her overnight bag. "Adrian mentioned we might go somewhere nice for dinner Saturday, just to catch up properly." Marcus swallowed the familiar tightness in his throat. "Sounds nice." "It's just dinner," she said, a slight edge entering her voice. "Don't make it weird." "I didn't say anything," he replied carefully, focusing on the laundry. "You didn't have to. I can feel you judging." Marcus took a measured breath. "Not judging, just folding shirts." Clara zipped her bag with a decisive pull. "This is important to me. He doesn't have anyone else to talk to right now." Marcus nodded, wondering when exactly his wife had become her ex-husband's only confidant, and why that responsibility trumped their weekends together. But he stayed silent, the unasked questions forming a wall between them as substantial as the laundry basket he now held like a shield. The email from Harrington International still glowed on Marcus's laptop screen when his phone rang. He answered it quickly, swiveling his chair toward the window in his home office. Marcus speaking. "It's Jim. Did you get my email about the London position?" His supervisor's voice carried the enthusiasm Marcus himself felt bubbling beneath the surface. "Just reading it now. Sounds incredible. It's perfect for you. The team specifically requested you after your presentation last month. 2-year assignment, substantial raise, housing allowance. What do you think?" Marcus's gaze drifted to the framed photo on his desk, him and Clara on their honeymoon. "It's definitely interesting. Can I have the weekend to think about it?" "Of course, but don't wait too long. They need an answer by Wednesday." As the call ended, Clara appeared in the doorway, her overnight bag at her feet. "Who was that?" Marcus turned, unable to contain his smile. "Jim, there's an opportunity in London. The Waverley project team was impressed with my presentation. They want me to head up their new division." Clara's expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. "London? As in England?" 2 years, Marcus nodded. "Great package, career advancement. It could be amazing for us." She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "My life is here, Marcus. My friends, my job, my—" She stopped herself. "Your what?" "My routine," she finished. "I can't just pick up and move across an ocean because your company thinks you gave a good PowerPoint." Marcus felt his excitement deflate. "It's a bit more than that." You know what I mean. She glanced at her watch. I need to go. Adrian's expecting me by 7. Can we talk about this when you get back Sunday? Marcus asked. Clara nodded noncommittally. Sure. But Marcus, don't get your hopes up. I'm not moving to London. She left before he could respond, the calendar on his wall suddenly drawing his attention. Every weekend for the past 6 months marked with her absences, little blank spaces in their shared life. The house felt different at night when Clara was gone, both emptier and somehow more his own. Marcus sat on the couch, a glass of wine on the coffee table, the television murmuring in the background. Saturday night, just past midnight. He'd worked late, ordering takeout that still sat half-eaten beside his wine. His phone buzzed with a text from Clara. Having a good time. Don't wait up tomorrow. Might be late. He typed back. Enjoy. Be safe. Simple. Uncomplicated. The script they followed every weekend. The unexpected sound of keys in the front door startled him. Clara stepped inside, looking equally surprised to see him still up. I forgot my charger, she explained, moving toward the bedroom. Phone's nearly dead. Marcus nodded, watching as she disappeared down the hallway. He took another sip of wine, listening to her rummaging through drawers. When she returned, charger in hand, she settled beside him on the couch for a moment, an unexpected gesture of connection that made something hopeful flutter in his chest. You didn't need to wait up, she said, her shoulder briefly touching his. Wasn't planning to, just working late. She nodded, her phone lighting up between them with an incoming message. Marcus caught the name on the screen, Adrian, before Clara turned it face down with uncharacteristic quickness. Everything okay? He asked. Fine, she replied too quickly. He's just wondering where I am. The phone buzzed again. Clara glanced at it, and Marcus didn't miss the small smile that crossed her lips before she schooled her features back to neutrality. She stood abruptly. I should go. He's waiting in the car. He's outside. He could have come in, Marcus said. It's late. He didn't want to disturb you. She leaned down to kiss his cheek, a perfunctory gesture. See you tomorrow. After she left, Marcus sat in the silence, the message he'd glimpsed on her phone screen burning in his mind. Miss you already. Bed feels empty without you. Just friends catching up. Right? He drained his wine glass in one swallow, the bitter taste matching the feeling settling in his chest. Morning light filtered through the kitchen blinds as Marcus measured coffee grounds into the filter. Clara had returned late Sunday morning, sliding into bed without waking him, but he'd felt the dip of the mattress, caught the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne. Now, she sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone, which hadn't left her hand since she'd emerged from the bedroom. Sleep well? He asked, keeping his tone casual. She mumbled without looking up. Adrian's couch isn't the most comfortable. Marcus set the coffee to brew, watching her from the corner of his eye. You stayed at his place? Just crashed there after dinner. It got late. She placed her phone face down on the counter, but kept her hand resting on it. What did you do all weekend? Worked mostly. Thought more about London. Her shoulders tensed slightly. I told you how I feel about that. Marcus placed a mug of coffee in front of her, their fingers briefly touching as she accepted it. I know, but it's a big opportunity. For you, she said, the words hanging between them. He busied himself with making toast, choosing his words carefully. So, how is Adrian doing these days? Fine. Her response came too quickly. Why? Just asking. You spend a lot of time with him. Clara's eyes narrowed slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, Marcus backpedaled, sensing the sudden shift in her mood. Just making conversation. She studied him for a moment, then picked up her phone again, effectively ending the discussion. Marcus turned back to the counter, the silence between them stretching taut like a wire about to snap. "So you're saying I should just stop seeing him altogether?" Clara's voice had risen an octave as she paced the living room. What had begun as a simple evening conversation had rapidly spiraled into something else entirely. Marcus sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped between his knees. "I didn't say that. I just asked why you need to spend every weekend with him. He's going through a difficult time. It's been 6 months, Clara." She stopped pacing, turning to face him. "So what? There's a time limit on supporting someone who matters to me?" "Of course not, but what, Marcus? Just say what you're really thinking." He took a deep breath. "I think it's unusual for a married woman to spend every weekend with her ex-husband. We were friends before we dated. We're friends now. Why is that so hard for you to understand?" "Friends don't send messages saying they miss you in bed," Marcus said, the words escaping before he could stop them. Clara went still. "You read my messages?" "I saw it on your screen. Friday night, when you came back for your charger." Her face flushed. "You were spying on me?" "It was right there, Clara." "I wasn't trying to see it." "So you accidentally saw one message out of context, and now you're what? Accusing me of something?" Marcus stood, finding his voice growing steadier. "I'm not accusing. I'm asking for honesty about what's really going on." "Nothing is going on," she snapped, making air quotes. "This is exactly why I don't tell you things. You twist everything." "I'm not twisting anything. I'm trying to understand why my wife spends more time with her ex-husband than with me." Clara stepped closer, her voice dropping dangerously. "Let me make this very clear, Marcus. If you don't trust me to spend time with an old friend who happens to be my ex, then maybe we need to reconsider this entire marriage." Marcus blinked, caught off guard by the sudden escalation. "That's not what I'm saying." "Isn't it? Because it sounds like you're giving me an ultimatum." "I'm not." "Well, here's mine," she interrupted. "Either you trust me completely, or we're done." It's that simple. The silence that followed felt like a physical weight pressing down on them both. The bedroom was dark except for the sliver of moonlight coming through the partially open curtains. Marcus lay on his side of the bed, acutely aware of the empty space between them. Clara was turned away from him, her breathing not yet settled into the rhythm of sleep. "I'm sorry," he finally said into the darkness. "I shouldn't have brought it up like that." She didn't respond immediately, and for a moment he thought she might be pretending to be asleep. Then she turned over to face him, though in the darkness he could barely make out her features. "I need you to trust me, Marcus. That's all I'm asking." He nodded, though she probably couldn't see it. "I know. I do trust you." The words felt hollow even as he spoke them, but they seemed to satisfy her. She reached across the space between them and squeezed his hand briefly. "Good. Because I would never do anything to hurt you." Marcus squeezed back, then released her hand. "I know." Clara turned away again, and within minutes her breathing had slowed, indicating she had fallen asleep. Marcus remained awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying their conversation. Trust her completely, or we're done. The ultimatum echoed in his mind, along with the memory of that message he'd seen. Something didn't add up, but he'd retreated for the sake of peace, as he always did. He thought about the London opportunity waiting in his inbox. How quickly she'd shut it down. How quickly she shut down any questioning of her time with Adrian. For the first time, Marcus allowed himself to consider that perhaps the foundation of their marriage wasn't just cracked, it might be fundamentally broken. And as he lay in the dark beside his sleeping wife, He wondered if constantly choosing peace at the expense of truth was slowly destroying something essential within himself. He closed his eyes, but sleep remained elusive, his mind too full of questions he was afraid to ask and answers he was afraid to hear. Sunday morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Marcus whisked eggs in a bowl. The sizzle of bacon provided a comforting backdrop to what had been a tense week following their argument. Clara appeared in the doorway, hair still damp from her shower, looking momentarily surprised at the domestic scene. "You're making breakfast?" she asked, a small smile playing at her lips. "Thought we could use a proper Sunday morning." He returned her smile cautiously. "Coffee's fresh." Clara poured herself a cup and leaned against the counter beside him. "Need any help? You could slice the fruit." They worked side by side, moving around each other in the familiar dance of a long-married couple. The silence between them was companionable rather than strained for the first time in weeks. "About what I said the other night," Clara began, carefully cutting a strawberry into perfect slices. "The ultimatum thing, that wasn't fair." Marcus paused, spatula hovering over the pan. "No, it wasn't. I just felt cornered, like you were accusing me without saying it." He turned to face her. "And I felt like you were dismissing my concerns without hearing them." Clara nodded slowly. "I can see that now. I do value our marriage, Marcus, more than anything." "Even more than your friendship with Adrian?" The question slipped out, gentler than before, but still direct. She met his eyes. "Yes, and I'll try to be more considerate about how much time I spend there." As they sat across from each other at the breakfast table, Marcus felt a cautious hope bloom. Clara reached across and squeezed his hand, the simple gesture mending something that had been broken between them. "This is nice," she said. "Us talking again." Marcus nodded, allowing himself to believe just for a moment that perhaps they could find their way back to solid ground. Marcus stared at the email from Jim, the deadline for the London position extended by another week. He hadn't mentioned it again to Clara after their tentative reconciliation, but the opportunity lingered in his mind like an unopened door. His office phone rang. "Have you made a decision yet?" Jim didn't bother with preliminaries. "They're getting antsy, but I've convinced them you're worth waiting for." Marcus glanced at the framed photo on his desk, now joined by a small note Clara had left in his lunch that morning. "Thinking of you. See. Actually, I've been reconsidering it." "That's what I wanted to hear. What changed your mind?" "Things at home are improving. Clara and I had a good talk." "So she's open to the move now?" Marcus hesitated. "Not exactly. But I think it's worth discussing again." After ending the call, he found himself drafting an email accepting the position contingent on a final discussion with his wife. His finger hovered over the send button when Clara appeared in his office doorway. "Hey," she said, leaning against the frame. "I was thinking about picking up dinner on my way home." Marcus quickly minimized the email. "Sounds good." She studied him for a moment. "Everything okay?" "Just work stuff." He gestured vaguely at his computer. "Actually, Jim called about London again." Clara's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Oh?" "They extended the deadline." He watched her carefully. "And I'm thinking of accepting." To his surprise, she didn't immediately object. "I see." She entered his office fully now, perching on the edge of his desk. "And what about us?" "That's why I wanted to talk about it again. It could be good for both of us. A fresh start." Clara was quiet for a moment. "Maybe you're right. I mean, I'd miss my friends, but—" "And Adrian?" Marcus couldn't help asking. Her eyes flickered briefly. He'd understand. if it's what we decided was best. For the first time in months, Marcus felt a surge of genuine optimism. We could visit the area first, see if you like it. Clara nodded, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Let me think about it, okay? As she left his office, Marcus turned back to his draft email with renewed confidence. Perhaps the London opportunity would be exactly what they needed, a chance to rebuild away from old patterns and complications. The living room was bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp as Marcus waited for Clara to return from her yoga class. He'd opened a bottle of wine to celebrate their newfound understanding and his growing certainty about London. The past few days had felt like a revelation. Clara, more attentive, their conversations more honest, the distance between them narrowing. Her laptop sat open on the coffee table, where she'd left it before class, her email notification pinging softly. Without thinking, Marcus glanced at the screen, intending to close the lid. The subject line caught his eye. This weekend. Hotel confirmation. From Adrian Lambert. Something cold settled in Marcus's stomach. He shouldn't look. He knew he shouldn't. But after everything, the ultimatum, the reconciliation, her apparent willingness to consider London, the contradiction was too stark to ignore. The email preview showed just enough. Great, booked the usual room. Can't wait to have you all to myself for 2 full days. No more of these stolen evenings. Marcus sat utterly still, the wine forgotten, as the truth crystallized with brutal clarity. There was no misinterpreting this, no context that could make it innocent. The messages, the weekends, her defensiveness, it all aligned into a picture he'd been refusing to see. He heard her key in the lock and quickly moved away from the laptop, his mind racing, but his body suddenly calm with the strange clarity that comes with devastating certainty. Clara entered, flushed from exercise. "Hey, you're still up?" She noticed the wine. "What's the occasion?" "Just thought it would be nice," he managed, his voice steadier than he expected. "How was yoga?" "Good. Challenging." She settled beside him on the couch, oblivious to the revelation that had just shattered his world. "Is that a 2018 Cabernet? My favorite." Marcus poured her a glass, watching as she casually closed her laptop without checking it. She had no idea that he knew, that in one unintended moment, the entire foundation of their reconciliation had been exposed as a facade. "To new beginnings," Clara said, raising her glass. "To truth," Marcus replied quietly, meeting her eyes as he took a sip. The wine tasted like ashes. Morning arrived with cruel indifference to Marcus's shattered world. He'd barely slept, lying motionless beside Clara as she breathed evenly, peacefully, the sleep of someone unburdened by truth. Now he moved through their morning routine like a ghost, his body performing familiar actions while his mind remained disconnected. Clara hummed as she prepared her coffee, oblivious to the chasm that had opened between them. "You're quiet this morning," she observed, stirring cream into her mug. "Didn't sleep well," Marcus replied, the understatement almost making him laugh. He kept his eyes on his toast, unable to look at her directly. Poor thing. She brushed her fingers against his shoulder as she passed, a casual touch that once would have comforted him, but now burned like acid. "I've got that client presentation today. Might be home late." With Adrian, his mind supplied automatically, planning their weekend getaway. "That's fine," he said, his voice hollow. Clara paused, studying him. "Are you sure you're okay? You seem off." For a brief moment, Marcus considered confronting her then and there, laying out what he knew, demanding explanations. But something held him back. A strange calm had settled over him, a need to understand the full extent of her deception before taking action. "Just tired," he repeated, forcing a wan smile. She seemed satisfied with his answer, returning to her morning preparations. Marcus watched her move about the kitchen with practiced ease, wondering how she could switch so seamlessly between her life with him and her affair with Adrian. Had there always been this capacity for deception within her, or had it developed gradually? When she kissed his cheek before leaving, he felt nothing but a distant numbness, as though observing someone else's life falling apart. Marcus sat in his home office, staring at his computer screen. Clara's email was still open in another browser tab, but he'd moved beyond that now. He'd spent the afternoon methodically gathering evidence, each new discovery another nail in the coffin of his marriage. Hotel receipts forwarded to her personal email. Text messages recovered from their shared cloud account. Calendar entries carefully labeled as work events that coincided perfectly with Adrian's social media posts from the same locations. The affair hadn't been going on for months. It had been years. Marcus picked up his phone and dialed a number he rarely used. "Hello?" Lisa's voice sounded surprised. "Lisa, it's Marcus, Clara's husband." "Oh, hi, Marcus. Is everything okay?" Lisa had been Clara's friend before they drifted apart last year. Marcus had always wondered why. "Actually, no. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." A pause. "This is about Adrian, isn't it?" The confirmation hit him like a physical blow. "So you knew." "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I tried to talk to her about it. That's why we stopped speaking." Marcus closed his eyes, absorbing this new piece of the puzzle. "How long has it been going on?" Lisa's sigh carried through the phone. "As far as I know, it never really stopped. They took a break when you two got serious. But about 3 years ago—" 3 years. Half their marriage. "Thank you for being honest," Marcus said, his voice remarkably steady. "What are you going to do?" Lisa asked. "I don't know yet." It wasn't entirely true. Something was crystallizing within him, not just anger or hurt, but a clarity he hadn't felt in years. After ending the call, Marcus opened his email and found Jim's message about London. With deliberate precision, he began drafting a response, each keystroke a small act of liberation. The house was silent and dark, Clara having texted that she was working late. Marcus sat alone in his office, the blue glow of his computer screen the only illumination. Midnight had come and gone, marking the first day of his new understanding. "Who are you?" he whispered to himself, not meaning Clara, but himself. Who was the man who had ignored every warning sign, who had chosen willful blindness over uncomfortable truth? He'd spent years diminishing his own needs, doubts, and ambitions to preserve a relationship that had been a lie. The London opportunity was just the most recent example. A dream deferred for the sake of a marriage that existed only in his imagination. Marcus opened his hands, palms up, as though physically releasing something. There was a strange comfort in hitting rock bottom, the recognition that there was nowhere to go but up. "You deserved better," he told himself, the words sounding foreign in the darkness. "You still do." For the first time, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of his anger, not just at Clara, but at himself for becoming complicit in his own diminishment. And yet, beneath the anger stirred something else, a sense of possibility. He turned to his computer, clicking on the draft email to Jim that he'd composed earlier. The cursor blinked at the end of his acceptance of the London position, waiting for his command. Was it running away to accept the job now? Or was it the first step toward reclaiming his life? The question itself revealed how deeply he'd internalized Clara's framing. This wasn't about running away. It was about moving toward something: his future, his worth, his truth. With newfound certainty, Marcus added a final paragraph requesting expedited processing of his transfer, then sent the email. The soft whoosh of the message departing seemed to echo in the quiet room, carrying with it the first tangible action of his new path forward. The screen confirmed. Message sent. In the dark reflection of his monitor, Marcus saw himself smile, a small, sad expression, but genuine. The path ahead would be difficult, painful even, but for the first time in years, it would be his own. The coffee shop buzzed with morning activity as Marcus sat at a corner table, nervously checking his watch. He'd called David on impulse, his oldest friend from college, who had maintained a steady presence in his life despite their busy schedules. They hadn't spoken in months, but David had immediately agreed to meet when he heard the tension in Marcus's voice. "Hey, man!" David slid into the seat across from him, concern evident in his eyes. "You look like hell." Marcus attempted a smile. "Thanks for coming on such short notice." "Of course." David studied him for a moment. "What's going on? You sounded off." Marcus wrapped his hands around his coffee mug, drawing strength from its warmth. "Clara's having an affair." "With Adrian?" David's expression didn't register surprise. "How long have you known?" "Definitively, a couple of days. But I think I've known somewhere inside for years." "I'm sorry, Marcus." David's voice carried genuine empathy. "What are you going to do?" "That's why I called you." "I don't know." Marcus paused. "Actually, that's not true. I've accepted a position in London. I just haven't told her yet." David nodded slowly. "Good for you, honestly." "Is it? Sometimes I wonder if I'm just running away." "Can I be blunt?" David leaned forward. "You've been diminishing yourself for years in this relationship. Every time we talk, you're less and less the Marcus I knew, the guy who had dreams, who stood his ground." Marcus winced. "That obvious, huh?" "To everyone but you, apparently." David's tone softened. "Look, I'm not saying leave or stay. I'm saying whatever you do, do it for yourself for once." "I don't even know who that is anymore." "Yes, you do. He's the guy who sent that email accepting the London job." David smiled. "He's still in there, and from where I'm sitting, he's starting to wake up." They talked for another hour, David neither pushing nor pulling, simply reflecting back what Marcus already knew but had been unable to face. As they parted, David embraced him firmly. "Remember," David said, "forgiving yourself is just as important as whatever you decide about forgiving her." The words echoed in Marcus's mind as he watched his friend walk away, carrying with them the first real comfort he'd felt in days. The lakeside path stretched before Marcus, scattered with early afternoon joggers and families enjoying the spring weather. He walked slowly, processing David's insights as the water glimmered beside him. Forgiving yourself is just as important. He hadn't considered that he might need forgiveness too, not for infidelity, but for abandoning himself, for becoming an accomplice in his own unhappiness. A fallen tree by the water's edge offered a natural bench, and Marcus sat, watching ripples expand across the lake's surface from a jumping fish. Each circle widened, affecting more of the water around it, just as each compromise he'd made had gradually altered more of his life. "When did I start believing I deserved less?" he asked aloud, the question carried away by the gentle breeze. The answer came not in words, but in memories. Clara's dismissal of his concerns about Adrian, her immediate rejection of the London opportunity, The subtle ways she'd positioned her needs as paramount while framing his as selfish, and his own complicity, choosing peace over truth, accommodation over self-respect. An elderly couple walked by, hands clasped, matching their pace to each other with the ease of decades. Marcus watched them, struck not by longing for what his marriage lacked, but by recognition of what real partnership required: mutual respect, truth, equal care. He stood, suddenly energized. The path continued around the lake, but instead of following it, Marcus struck out toward the parking lot. He had spent too long circling the same issues, following familiar patterns. It was time to chart a new course. In his car, Marcus placed his hands on the steering wheel, but didn't start the engine immediately. There was something powerful in this moment of decision, not just about leaving a broken marriage, but about reclaiming his agency. "I choose myself," he said, the words feeling like a vow, not selfish, but sacred, an acknowledgement of his own worth. As he drove away from the lake, Marcus felt something unfamiliar but unmistakable: the quiet certainty of a man who finally knows his own mind. Marcus's home office looked different somehow, the same furniture, books, and photos, but viewed through new eyes. He moved purposefully, gathering documents he would need: passport, birth certificate, financial records. Clara had texted that she was working late again, giving him space to prepare without interruption. His phone rang, Jim calling with characteristic timing. "I got your email," Jim said, bypassing hello. "Wanted to confirm you're serious about the expedited timeline. They're thrilled, but it means you'd need to be in London in 3 weeks. "I'm serious," Marcus replied, his voice steady with newfound resolve. "The sooner the better, actually." "What changed? Last we spoke, you were concerned about Clara's reaction." Marcus paused, considering how much to share. "Let's just say my circumstances have changed. I'm ready for this move, personally and professionally." "Well, they're ready for you. I'm sending over the official offer letter and relocation package details now. There's an apartment they can secure for your first 2 months while you find something permanent." As they discussed logistics, Marcus felt a growing sense of momentum. Each detail confirmed: the start date, the housing allowance, the shipping arrangements, was another step away from deception and toward truth. After ending the call, Marcus turned to the calendar on his wall, the one where he had once marked Clara's weekend absences. Now he circled a new date: his departure for London, 3 weeks from today. He drafted a brief email to David. "Made my decision. Leaving for London in 3 weeks. Thank you for helping me see clearly." The office that had witnessed countless late nights of work while Clara was with Adrian would now serve a different purpose, as headquarters for his strategic exit. Not in anger or revenge, but in the calm certainty that he deserved an authentic life. When his computer pinged with the arrival of the official London offer letter, Marcus opened it immediately. The company logo at the top of the page seemed to glow with promise, not just of professional opportunity, but of personal rebirth. Without hesitation, he electronically signed the document, each keystroke an act of self-affirmation. The confirmation appeared on screen. "Your acceptance has been received." Marcus leaned back in his chair, a sense of peace settling over him for the first time in days. The path ahead would not be easy, but it would be his own. "I'll need to close the joint account and transfer my portion to my new personal account," Marcus explained to the bank representative, his voice calm and professional. "I'd also like information about international banking options." The woman nodded, typing efficiently. "Harrington International has a partnership with our London branch. I can set up an account that will be active when you arrive. Marcus had created a methodical checklist for his departure: finances, housing, shipping, legal documentation. Each completed item represented another step toward freedom. From the bank, he went directly to his company's HR department, where the relocation specialist awaited him with a folder of documents. "We've secured a short-term apartment in Kensington," she explained. "The company will cover shipping for essential items, but the furnished accommodation should minimize what you need immediately." "Perfect," Marcus replied, signing the forms with steady hands. "What about work permits?" "Already in process. Legal has expedited everything." Later that afternoon, while Clara was at yoga, a transparent cover for meeting Adrian, Marcus sorted through his possessions, categorizing them efficiently. Take, leave, donate. The wedding album went into the leave pile without hesitation. In his home office, he carefully backed up important files and photos to a secure cloud account Clara couldn't access. The preparations felt not like running away, but like reclaiming control, deliberate steps toward a life governed by truth rather than deception. When his phone rang, it was the International Shipping Company. "Yes, I'll need a small container," he confirmed. "Primarily books, some clothing, and personal items. No furniture." With each arrangement, each decision, Marcus felt his resolve strengthening. The panic and grief that had initially overwhelmed him had transformed into focused determination. The strategic Marcus, the one who excelled professionally but had been absent in his personal life, was now fully engaged in orchestrating his liberation. The cafe was tucked away on a side street, far from Clara and Adrian's usual haunts. Marcus arrived early, choosing a corner table with his back to the wall, a position that afforded both privacy and a view of the entrance. Jason arrived 10 minutes later, looking uncomfortable. As Adrian's former roommate and current colleague, he occupied a unique position, close enough to have access, but distant enough to have perspective. "Thanks for meeting me," Marcus said as Jason sat down. "I almost didn't come," Jason admitted. "This feels complicated." "I understand. I wouldn't ask if there were another way." Jason's fingers drummed nervously on the table. "What exactly do you want from me, Marcus?" "The truth. Evidence of what's been happening between Clara and Adrian." Jason winced. "Look, I don't want to get involved in—" "I already know," Marcus interrupted gently. "I've seen enough to confirm it. I'm not looking to create drama. I'm moving to London in 2 weeks. This is about closure, not revenge." Jason studied him, seeming to weigh his sincerity. "You're really leaving?" "Yes, but I need to protect myself. Clara's been gaslighting me for years, making me question my own perceptions. I need concrete evidence, for myself, and in case she tries to control the narrative afterward." After a long moment, Jason reached for his phone. "Adrian uses my Netflix account. He stays logged into his email on my PlayStation." He swiped through several screens. "He's not exactly discreet. I've considered telling you before, but it wasn't your place," Marcus finished. "I understand." Jason handed over his phone. "These are screenshots from the last 6 months. Hotel reservations, explicit messages, plans. There's a shared album I can access, too." Marcus scrolled through the images, each one confirming what he already knew, but with a devastating clarity he hadn't anticipated. Dates, times, locations, all matching Clara's work events and girls' weekends. "I'm sorry, man," Jason said quietly. "For what it's worth, I think Adrian's an asshole for this." Marcus nodded, forwarding the screenshots to his secure email. "Thank you for your honesty. It matters more than you know." As they parted, Marcus felt not the reopening of wounds, but their cauterization, painful but necessary for healing to begin. The apartment was filled with the aroma of Marcus's cooking when Clara returned home. He'd prepared her favorite meal, a strategy she'd used countless times when preparing to manipulate him. Tonight, the tables were turned. "This is a surprise," Clara said, dropping her bag and coming to kiss his cheek. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion," Marcus replied, plating the food with careful precision. "Just thought it would be nice." Clara studied him, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. She'd been noticing the subtle changes in him, his reduced availability, his newfound independence, his lack of questions about her whereabouts. "You've been different lately," she observed, accepting the glass of wine he offered. "Have I?" "More distant. Is something wrong?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Nothing's wrong. I've just been focused on work." They ate in relative silence until Clara launched her first attempt. "I was thinking we should talk more about London," she said, her voice deliberately casual. "I know I wasn't supportive initially." "Oh?" Marcus kept his tone neutral. "I've been thinking that maybe it could work, if the timing is right." She reached across to touch his hand. "We could use a fresh start." Just weeks ago, this apparent concession would have filled him with hope. Now he recognized it for what it was, a preemptive move to regain control. "That's interesting," he said, neither accepting nor rejecting her overture. Clara frowned slightly, unaccustomed to this ambiguity. "Don't you want that? Us starting fresh somewhere new?" "What I want has changed recently." Her eyes narrowed. "Meaning what exactly?" "Meaning I'm still figuring things out." He stood, collecting their plates. "More wine?" Later, as they prepared for bed, Clara tried again, slipping into the bathroom while he brushed his teeth. "I miss you," she said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "We've been like strangers lately." Marcus met her eyes in the mirror. "Have we?" "You know we have." Her hands moved suggestively. "Stay home this weekend. I'll cancel my plans with the girls. We can reconnect." The irony was almost painful, her offering to cancel time with Adrian as a generous concession. "Actually," Marcus said, turning to face her, "I think the space has been good. You should keep your plans." Confusion and frustration flashed across Clara's face. This wasn't how their script usually played out. "Fine," she said finally, her tone cooling. "If that's what you want." In bed, Clara kept to her side, her back a wall of silent reproach designed to make him apologize, to draw him back into the familiar pattern. Marcus lay awake, watching her silhouette in the darkness, feeling not anger, but a profound sense of liberation. When morning came, Clara was already packing her weekend bag, her movements deliberately loud, another manipulation tactic. "I'll be back Sunday night," she said tersely. "Have a good weekend," Marcus replied, maintaining eye contact until she looked away first. As the door closed behind her, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. For the first time in their relationship, he had maintained his boundaries without guilt or compromise. The weekend stretched before him, not as empty hours to be endured, but as precious time to finalize his departure from a marriage that had been more prison than partnership. The morning light filtered through the apartment windows as Marcus placed the last box by the door. 3 weeks of careful preparation had culminated in this moment. His essential possessions packed into a handful of containers, the shipping company scheduled to arrive within the hour. He moved through the rooms one final time, his footsteps echoing in the half-empty space. The apartment felt both familiar and foreign now, like a museum exhibit of his former life. He paused in the bedroom, running his hand over the dresser where Clara's things remained untouched. He had taken only what was undeniably his, leaving no room for accusations of spite or theft. On the kitchen counter, he placed 3 items: his house key, a sealed envelope containing a brief, factual explanation of his departure, and his wedding ring. The small gold band caught the light as he set it down, no longer a symbol of connection, but of constraint removed. The doorbell rang. David, who had insisted on helping with the final departure. "All set?" David asked, surveying the modest collection of boxes. Marcus nodded. "Just need to load these and drop off the keys at the management office." They worked in companionable silence, loading Marcus's life into David's SUV. With each box transferred, Marcus felt a growing lightness, as if the physical removal of his possessions was mirrored by an unburdening of his spirit. "When does Clara get back?" David asked as they closed the trunk. "Sunday evening. The evidence will be waiting in her email by then. Are you sure about this? Not waiting to tell her in person?" Marcus looked back at the apartment building. "I spent years waiting for honesty that never came. This isn't about revenge. It's about freedom." As they drove away, Marcus didn't look back. The rearview mirror showed only the road ahead, a fitting metaphor for his focus now. The weight of deception and compromise that had pressed upon him for so long began to lift with each mile that separated him from the apartment. Not just a physical space, but the confines of a life built on illusion. The hotel room offered a neutral space, neither the apartment that held too many memories, nor the airport that awaited him tomorrow. Marcus sat at the desk, laptop open, carefully reviewing the evidence package he had assembled. This wasn't about destroying Clara, but neither would he leave in silence, allowing her to control the narrative as she had controlled so many aspects of their relationship. The truth deserved voice. He had distilled the evidence to its essence. Screenshots of hotel reservations, time-stamped photos, explicit messages between Clara and Adrian spanning years. Nothing edited or manipulated. The raw truth was damning enough. His finger hovered over the send button as he reviewed the recipient list. Clara herself, of course, their closest mutual friends, who deserved to understand his sudden departure. Lisa, who had risked her friendship with Clara by being honest. And finally, the HR department at Clara's company, where her relationship with Adrian violated professional ethics policies. Marcus had wrestled with that last inclusion, but ultimately decided that truth without consequences wasn't truth at all. Still, he had been selective, not including Clara's parents or extended family, not broadcasting to casual acquaintances. This was justice, not public humiliation. "This isn't vengeance," he said aloud, his voice steady in the quiet room. "This is truth reclaiming its rightful place." He clicked send, watching the progress bar as the email with its attachments departed. There was no rush of vindictive pleasure, only a solemn recognition that deception could no longer thrive in darkness. His phone rang almost immediately. David checking in. "It's done," Marcus said. "How do you feel?" Marcus considered the question. "Free. Not happy, exactly, but at peace with my choice." After hanging up, he composed one final email, to Jim, confirming his flight details for tomorrow and his Monday start date. As he typed, Marcus realized he was smiling. The focus on future possibilities, rather than past betrayals, felt like oxygen after years of slow suffocation. He closed his laptop and moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow would bring a new country, new colleagues, new challenges. For the first time in years, Marcus felt genuine anticipation rather than resignation about what lay ahead. 3 months into his London position, Marcus stood at the window of his Kensington flat, watching the autumn leaves drift across the park opposite. The city had embraced him in ways he hadn't anticipated, its energy and history providing both stimulation and comfort as he built his new life. His phone chimed with a text from David. News update. Clara failed tax audit, 18K debt. Moved back with parents after apartment foreclosure. Adrian transferred to Chicago office after London deal fell through. Marcus read it without the surge of satisfaction or vindication he might once have expected. Clara's consequences were her own to bear, just as his new life was his to build. Thanks for the update. Hope you're well, he replied simply. His new team had just successfully completed their first major project, exceeding targets and earning recognition from senior leadership. The Waverley initiative that had first drawn him to London was now his signature achievement, the foundation of a rapidly advancing career. Marcus, we're heading to the pub. Coming? His colleague Priya appeared in his office doorway, her enthusiasm infectious. Absolutely. Be right there. The gastropub was crowded with Friday evening patrons, the team occupying a large corner table. As Marcus approached with a round of drinks, he accidentally bumped into a woman turning from the bar. "I'm so sorry," he said, managing to save the drinks with impressive dexterity. "No harm done," she replied, her accent revealing American origins similar to his own. "Nice save, by the way." "Years of practice navigating crowded spaces," he laughed. "I'm Marcus." "Aoife," she said, extending her hand. "Are you with the Harrington Group? I've been consulting on your Waverley project." The data analysis, that was brilliant work. Her smile was genuine, her eyes meeting his directly. "Thank you. It's nice when good work gets recognized." Their conversation flowed with surprising ease, discovering shared interests and complementary perspectives. When his team waved him over, Marcus hesitated. "Would you like to join us?" he asked. "Or maybe we could grab coffee sometime. I'd love to hear more about your approach to the statistical models." "Coffee would be great," Aoife replied, entering her number into his phone. As he rejoined his colleagues, Marcus was struck by the contrast between this moment and his life just months ago. There was no desperate need for connection, no fear of solitude driving him toward attachment. Instead, there was simply the pleasure of authentic interaction, the potential of new friendship, and perhaps something more. The evening continued with laughter and camaraderie, Marcus fully present in a way he hadn't been for years. The path that had led him here, through betrayal and pain, now seemed less like an escape route and more like a journey toward the person he was meant to become. As he looked around at his new colleagues, at this new city, at the possibilities unfolding before him, Marcus realized that in choosing himself, he had found not just freedom from a broken relationship, but freedom to embrace a life of authenticity and potential. The spring sun warmed Marcus's face as he stood on the banks of the Thames, watching boats glide past on the water. 1 year had passed since he'd left his old life behind, a year of growth, challenges, and unexpected joy. London had become home in ways he never anticipated. His career had flourished, but more importantly, he had flourished, rediscovering parts of himself that had been buried beneath years of compromise and doubt. He thought back to that final night in the apartment, placing his wedding ring on the counter. At the time, it had felt like an ending. Now, he recognized it as a beginning, the first step toward reclaiming his authentic self. The most profound lesson hadn't been about Clara's betrayal, but about his own betrayal of himself. For years, he had sacrificed his needs, intuition, and truth on the altar of peace, a peace that was always illusory. "Self-respect isn't selfishness," he murmured, words that had become a personal mantra. "It's the foundation of genuine connection." His relationship with Aoife had developed slowly, deliberately, built on honesty and mutual respect rather than desperate need or fear of solitude. Whether it led to something lasting or remained a meaningful chapter, it had taught him that real intimacy required two whole people choosing each other daily, not two broken people clinging to illusions. Forgiveness had come gradually, not just for Clara, but for himself. And he had learned to recognize the warning signs he'd ignored, to understand the patterns of his own enabling, and to forgive the man who had been too afraid of loneliness to demand truth. The river before him continued its eternal flow, carrying away the old and bringing in the new, a perfect metaphor for the cycle of loss and renewal. Marcus had lost a marriage built on deception, but gained a life anchored in authenticity. The greatest freedom, he had discovered, wasn't in escaping someone else's betrayal, but in choosing oneself, honoring one's own worth enough to demand reality over illusion, respect over convenience, truth over false peace. As he turned from the river toward his future, Marcus carried this wisdom not as a burden of past pain, but as a gift to guide his journey forward.